This Corecon training video covers another subject under estimating cost database, namely work assemblies. A work assembly is a group of labor, equipment, and work items that are part of a single system or operation of work and share common dimensional information. Work assemblies are a powerful tool for generating estimates quickly and eliminate the risk of an item being missed. When adding an assembly to an estimate, all components will be added at once. The quantity of the assembly and each component is calculated using a shared list of variables. The option can be found from the cost database on the main menu and work assemblies. A work assembly can be a combination of equipment items, labor items, work items, and materials. Before you begin creating a work assembly, remember to ensure that all labor items, equipment items, and work items have been created that will be referenced as an assembly component. Optionally, ensuring that the classification codes or master cost code lists are available so that these can be used to group or filter work assembly items. If you go to the knowledge base under cost database and work assemblies, there's two articles that you'll want to pay attention to under assembly variables and equations. First of all, the allowed math functions. Although the variable we're using in the example in this training video is a very simple one, there are additional math functions you'll be able to use. Back to that help article, we also should go to the special variables that can be used in equations. The two options, WAQTY and ESTQTY, and notice there's no space in those variables. Back to the assemblies. To create a new assembly from the main menu, cost database, and work assemblies, over to actions and click add manually. And we're going to give this a code. This code is user definable. It does not relate to any cost code, although I am using a prefix from a cost code as mine. It has no role in the calculation. We do recommend that you keep these shorter and keep them in some sort of organized fashion to make finding this assembly easier. We're going to call this assembly concrete slab on grade, 4 inches thick, reinforced. And the unit of measure, which will be the estimate unit of measure, is by the square foot. And click add and next. If one of your components includes labor items separate from the work item, you'll want to select those here. The example we're using today, we're using work items, which is a combination of materials, labor, equipment, subcontract, and so on. I'm going to skip this step. The same thing can be true of the equipment items. If you estimate these separately, select those at this point. However, in this example, we're using work items solely from the cost database. And I've already confirmed that those components are already in my cost database. So we're going to skip this one as well. For work items, we have quite a few. So we're selecting the forms and click add. The expansion joint, click add. The reinforcement and click add. The concrete material, click add. The placement and delivery of the material. Concrete finishing. The hardener. The curing treatment. The vapor barrier. Some fine grading. Now we need to add a variable. This is a reference to the takeoff quantity, and I'm simply going to call it variable O1 or VO1. Some important things to remember: work assemblies and components must each have a formula that contains one or more of the shared variables. Without that, the quantities cannot be calculated. Components can be added or removed from the assembly after it is inserted into the estimate. Variable codes should not have any spacing. Notice between the V and the numbers 01, no space in between. The variable codes should not be a single character. our variable will be VO1. And we're just going to call it work assembly quantity. We're going to create a default of 1 square feet. All of the equations we add to the components should be compared by unit of measure to this single square foot. Then we'll click Add and Next. We do want to add a classification so that if we're using the auto-populate feature in the estimate, these can be inserted into the correct location. So I'm going to use the master cost code list called CSI 2016. We're going to go to concrete, down to structural concrete, and heavyweight structural concrete. I'm going to click Finish. Now we need to click Edit and now add the equations. Again, we're going to always be comparing the unit of measure from the header of the assembly to the unit of measure on the item. And each of these work items includes a combination of materials, labor, equipment, subcontract, and other. So clicking the component edit button, these will all start with equals VO1 and the asterisk, which represents the multiplier. And I'm going to go ahead and just copy those down. We'll put in the factors after that. The first item, the unit of measure, is by the linear foot. Remember, when adding a fraction, you must always start the fraction with a 0 and a decimal point. So we're converting square feet to linear foot. Next to the expansion joint, also by the linear foot. The welded fabric is by the 100 square feet. The concrete is by the cubic yard. The placement is also by the cubic yard. Finishing is by the square foot. So this is a very simple one. It's the square foot in the takeoff quantity, in the header of the assembly, and since the concrete finishing is also by the square foot, it's very simply a 1-to-1 conversion. Concrete surface treatment is by 100 of square feet. The vapor barrier is by the square, and then we'll click Save. Now let's assume for a minute that we want to also include the fine grading and fill gravel. If we go back to the top, we can import items, import work items, select the master cost code list, and search. Back to the cost database. If we go into work assemblies again, we'll now see our assembly's been added. If we decided to add additional items, you can import more items from equipment, labor, or work items. You can also edit the equation, descriptions, and so on by just simply clicking the edit button. And the same is true for the variables. Back to the top, let's open the work assembly details, because I also need to add to the work assembly header. Since VO1 represents the variable, the calculation is by the square foot, then the equation is also equals VO1. Square foot to square foot, save and close. Now let's go see how to add this to an estimate. So I'm going to go to leads. I've already set up a lead. Down to estimates. And I've already created an estimate we can use. I'm going to open that, click View Estimate. I'm first going to add a cost code as a default for the entire assembly, although I could use the auto-populate feature when adding an assembly from the cost database. So I'm going to go over to Add Import. I'm going to import a master cost code. My default cost code list is identified. And we're going to select structural concrete as a default cost code. So it's part of my work breakdown structure or estimate cost code. Now I'm going over to items. I'm going to add import items. I'm going to add from cost database. I'm going to use my local cost database work assemblies. And I'm going to switch this to text search and just include the word concrete. Next, I'm going to select the existing cost code. I'm going to select the assembly we just created. I'm going to click Add and Close. All of the items have been added. Remember, we created a default quantity of 1. So we can see we now have a $4.02 calculation per square foot because that was the takeoff quantity unit of measure. Now I want to adjust that quantity so I can open any one of the items in this assembly and you'll be able to see all those same components. I'm going to scroll down to the variable, click Edit, and I'm going to change the 1 square foot to 2,000 square feet. And when I click Save, it'll recalculate. Go back out to the items in the estimate. Now we can see the calculation, including all the components I've updated. And now we're showing a total cost of $8,058 for 2,000 square feet. If you'd like to know more about the information in this training video, we encourage you to go to the knowledge base, to cost database, and to work assemblies. The help article includes the information covered in this training video, as well as additional and more detailed information you might find helpful.